How destructive are they? What are they capable of?
They're very destructive. If I looked at it on average, I could lose up to 10% of my grain crops in a growing season.
American farmers are under siege. An army of wild boars is tearing through fields, destroying crops and toppling fences with terrifying ease. These animals are intelligent, fast, and furious.
I think somebody said pigs are the fourth smartest mammal, but they're probably smarter than about 80% of the humans, would be my best guess.
Traditional methods to stop the invaders have all failed woefully. But now, desperate farmers are deploying new, brutal, and almost unthinkably clever strategies.
Pigs gone wild. Researchers found that Texas has the worst feral hog problem in the entire country. $2.5 billion in agricultural damage each year.
The farm-wrecking menace. Wild boars are not just a nuisance, they are a nightmare stalking America's farmlands. Across the country, wild boars cause more than $1.5 billion in damage every year. This damage is not abstract, and it is not distant. It shows up as broken crops, lost income, and farms pushed closer to collapse. In Texas alone, losses rise above $119 million each year. These numbers represent real families and real land. Cornfields are shredded, soy and wheat fields are flattened. Pastures that once fed livestock are ripped open and left useless. What took months of planning and labor can be erased in a single night. The physical damage is shocking, but the deeper harm is even worse. Boars do not just eat crops. They rip plants out by the roots while searching for food in the soil. They dig deep trenches that destroy the structure of the land. Soil washes away after rain because the surface is torn apart. Roots that hold the ground together are gone.
Sometimes violent and destructive behavior of the wild ones.
Even when farmers replant, the land often fails them. Fields stay weak for years because the damage goes far below what the eye can see. Fences offer little protection. Thick posts are pushed over. Wire is bent and ripped loose. Gates are smashed and left hanging. Once a boar finds a weak point, it remembers it.
And after that, I mean, they're able to go back into estrus pretty quickly after.
These animals return again and again, using the same entry paths. They move with purpose and confidence as if the land belongs to them. They do not wander blindly. They test barriers and exploit mistakes. When one boar breaks through, the rest follow. Livestock suffers as well. Boars break into pens and cause panic. Calves and young pigs are injured or killed. Water sources become dirty and unsafe after being churned with mud and waste. Disease spreads easily in these conditions. Farmers are left to deal with sick animals and rising costs, all while trying to protect what remains of their land. The attacks usually happen at night. A group known as a sounder moves silently under cover of darkness. In just a few hours, an entire hectare can be destroyed. By morning, the damage is complete and nothing can be undone. The speed of this destruction leaves farmers feeling powerless. There is no time to react and no warning before the strike. The problem grows faster every year because wild boars reproduce at a terrifying rate. A single sow can give birth twice a year. Each litter can contain 6 to 10 piglets. Those piglets grow quickly and soon begin breeding themselves. In one season, a small group can turn into dozens. Control efforts struggle to keep up. Removal today is replaced by more animals tomorrow. And the cycle continues. This constant threat takes a heavy mental toll. Farmers lose sleep knowing another attack could happen before dawn. Fields that once felt secure now feel exposed. Orchards, barns, and pastures are never truly safe. The stress builds night after night. The land that once provided stability becomes a source of fear. With this level of destruction repeating year after year, it became clear that traditional methods could not stop them. Farmers were pushed to question everything they believed about controlling wild pigs because nothing they had tried was ever enough. Failed defenses and the search for creative solutions. For decades, farmers relied on the same tools they had always used: believing that stronger barriers and better weapons would eventually solve the problem. They built fences, set traps, and carried guns, spending huge amounts of money on systems that promised control. But again and again those promises collapsed. Electric fences stretched across fields and pastures, hummed with power meant to scare animals away. But wild boars approached anyway. They touched the wires, took the shock, backed off briefly, then returned. After one or two shocks, they learned where the current was weakest. They dug underneath. They pushed soil over the wires. They slipped through gaps no human noticed. Reinforced steel gates were installed next. They looked unbreakable. When the sounders arrived, dozens of pigs pressed against them at once. The metal bent, hinges twisted. What was meant to protect the land became another failure point. Each broken gate showed farmers that strength alone was not enough against an animal that used numbers and persistence as weapons. Hunting was once seen as the most reliable solution. Farmers and hired hunters targeted pigs whenever they appeared. At first it felt effective. A few animals were removed and the field seemed quieter for a short time. Then the problem grew worse. The pigs that survived learned fast. They associated gunshots with danger. They changed their movement patterns. They stopped traveling during daylight. They scattered instead of staying grouped. Traps that once worked stood empty because pigs refused to enter them. Shooting a few pigs did not weaken the population. It trained it. Even the most expensive technology failed under real conditions. Electric fences lost power during storms. A single fallen branch or broken wire opened a path straight into the field. Motion sensors triggered false alarms from deer or raccoons, exhausting farmers who rushed out too often for nothing. Traps were set carefully, only to be tripped by smaller animals. When pigs did approach, the smarter ones hung back, watching others go first. When something went wrong, they remembered. Every method had a flaw. Every plan was exposed. Farmers slowly realized that effort was not the problem. Money was not the problem. The real issue was that they were fighting the wrong kind of enemy. Traditional methods treated visible damage but ignored how the pigs thought and moved. Fields were defended one by one, while sounders simply shifted to neighboring land. They fed elsewhere, waited, then returned at night to finish what they started. The pigs thrived because human defenses were scattered. Some landowners were absent. Others treated farming as a hobby. Neighbors acted alone, never coordinating together. These gaps created safe areas where pigs could hide, rest, and breed. From these shelters, they spread again. The landscape itself worked in their favor. This forced a painful realization. Farmers stopped reacting and started observing. They began thinking in terms of patience, timing, and pressure instead of brute force, territory. It was a battle of thinking, planning, and endurance. And once farmers truly understood the pig's intelligence and resilience, they began developing methods so relentless and calculated that the invaders were forced to change yet again. Trenches and the anatomy of a trap. When modern tools kept failing, farmers looked backward instead of forward and returned to one of the oldest defensive ideas humans have ever used. They turned to trenches. At first, the idea sounded almost too basic to matter. A trench is nothing more than a deep ditch cut into the earth, usually 1 to 1.5 meters deep, carved along the full edge of a field. It does not buzz with electricity. It does not rely on sensors or moving parts. It just sits there, silent and open. Yet its power comes from how perfectly it targets the wild boar's physical limits. Wild boars are heavy animals built close to the ground. Their bodies are thick, dense, and designed for pushing forward, not jumping upward. Unlike deer, they cannot leap cleanly over sudden drops. When a boar reaches the edge of a trench, it struggles to judge the depth. Its vision and body coordination fail at that moment. To cross, it would need a running start and clear ground, which the uneven soil near a trench does not allow. The result is simple and brutal. The animal stops. However, building these trenches is not easy. Farmers must move massive amounts of earth. Bulldozers and heavy machinery are often required, working for days or weeks depending on the size of the field. The cost is high and the labor is exhausting. But once the trench is finished, it does not break. It does not lose power during storms. It does not need daily checks or constant repairs. Rain does not disable it. Time does not weaken it. The trench becomes part of the land itself. The effect is immediate. Sounders that once flooded into fields without resistance now reach the edge and stall. They pace along the ditch, searching for a way across. They test different points. They push forward, then retreat. Many simply give up and move on. Fields that were once destroyed overnight suddenly survive untouched. For the first time in years, farmers see crops standing where they should be. But the trench is not a final answer. It only blocks entry. It does nothing to solve the problem already inside the field. Any pigs trapped within the perimeter remain alive and dangerous. If ignored, they will feed, breed, and adapt. Over time, they may find ways to exploit weak soil, drainage points, or human access paths. Farmers understood that leaving pigs inside was just delaying the next disaster. This is where the trench revealed its true role. It was not a solution by itself. It was a tool to slow the chaos and create control. By sealing the perimeter, farmers stopped the flow of new pigs. That bought them time. Time to observe, time to plan, time to focus on the animals already inside without interference from outside sounders. With the land finally secured, the focus shifted inward. Farmers began preparing for a different kind of attack, one that did not rely on strength or steel. The next phase would target the pig's instincts, habits, and decision-making. The trench had locked the door. What came next would force the pigs to walk willingly into their own downfall. The sour mash trap. Patience as a weapon. Farmers slowly learned that capturing wild pigs was not about speed or force. It required patience at a level most people could not tolerate. Rushing always failed. Any mistake taught the pigs how to survive the next attempt. Out of years of trial and failure came a method that changed everything. It became known as whole sounder removal. The idea was simple but unforgiving. Every single pig in the group had to be captured at the same time. If even one escaped, the effort was wasted because that survivor would remember the danger and teach the next generation how to avoid it. This approach always began with bait. Farmers used sour mash, a mixture of corn, water, sugar, yeast, and gelatin. Left sitting in the sun, the mash fermented and produced a smell so strong it was hard for humans to stand near it. The odor traveled across the land and carried for miles. To pigs, it was irresistible. They followed it without hesitation, driven by hunger and curiosity. For weeks, farmers did nothing else. They placed the bait and waited. They did not disturb it. They did not set traps. They just watched. Cameras were installed to monitor every visit. Each pig was observed again and again. Farmers learned which animals arrived first and which stayed back. They identified scouts that tested safety and a dominant female that decided when the group would feed. They tracked how long pigs stayed, how they reacted to changes, and which ones were cautious. Only after the entire sounder showed complete comfort around the bait did the trap come into play. The trap itself was a large corral with walls tall enough to prevent escape. It was controlled remotely through a live video feed on a smartphone. This allowed the farmer to watch in real time without being present. Timing was everything. The trap could not close early. If it did, pigs outside would scatter and learn. The farmer waited until every pig, including juveniles and subadults, was fully inside and feeding calmly. Then the gate dropped. In seconds, the sounder was contained. No escape, no survivors. It was a method that demanded absolute discipline. Weeks of preparation could be ruined by one impatient moment. Yet when done correctly, it worked. Entire groups disappeared at once, leaving no one behind to adapt or warn others. Each successful capture felt like a small win in a much larger war. It proved that intelligence could be met with intelligence. Instinct could be used against itself. This approach showed that patience and understanding behavior could be just as effective as weapons. But the fight was not over. As sounders vanished from open fields, surviving pigs adapted again. They pushed deeper into darkness and became more active at night. To keep control, farmers knew they would have to follow them there and expand the battle beyond daylight and visible ground. Thermal night hunting. The darkness no longer protects. Daytime hunting slowly lost all value. Wild pigs adapted faster than expected, shifting almost all movement to nighttime hours when human presence dropped and visibility collapsed. Darkness became their shield. Fields that looked calm during the day came alive after sunset. Farmers realized that if they stayed bound to daylight, they would keep losing ground. To respond, many farmers adopted night detection technology designed to reveal what darkness hides. Thermal imaging systems allowed them to see heat rather than shape, exposing pigs as glowing forms against the cooler land. Fog, smoke, and thick brush no longer offered the animals reliable cover. What the eye could not see, technology could still detect. This shift did not make the work easier. It only made it possible again. Modern equipment helped farmers observe pigs from a distance without flooding fields with light or noise. Quiet, controlled approaches reduced chaos and prevented immediate panic. When pigs were startled too early, they scattered and vanished. Precision mattered more than speed. The goal was not a chase. It was for control. Each encounter had to end quickly and cleanly, or the survivors would learn and disappear for weeks. Biology became part of the strategy. Pigs cannot cool their bodies through sweat. Heat forces them toward water and mud to regulate their temperature. These wallows became critical locations. Farmers noticed patterns tied to weather, seasons, and temperature. During intense heat, pigs grew predictable. During cooler periods, they spread wider and took fewer risks. Understanding these rhythms helped farmers anticipate movement rather than react to destruction after it happened. Still, night operations came with constant risk. Pigs posted scouts. Some animals stayed back, watching and listening. Over time, certain sounders learned to recognize engine noise, unfamiliar movement, or subtle changes in their environment. When they sensed danger, they vanished completely, abandoning fields that once fed them. This forced farmers to remain disciplined and cautious. Any repeated mistake could erase months of progress. The cost was heavy. Night work meant long hours, lost sleep, and expensive equipment that required constant upkeep. Fatigue became a real danger. One missed detail could turn a controlled situation into failure. Yet without these efforts, pigs reclaimed territory fast. Night operations did not end the problem, but they prevented it from spiraling out of control. The struggle had transformed. It was no longer about defending fences or reacting to damage. It had become a tactical contest shaped by learning, adjustment, and pressure. Farmers studied behavior, exploited physical limits, and changed plans in real time. Every night felt like a high-stakes test where one side adapted and the other paid the price. But even the most advanced traps and thermal scopes could not prevent the pigs from evolving, forcing farmers to devise a method so dark and chilling it risked entering truly unthinkable territory. The chilling Judas pig trick. Farmers eventually stopped chasing pigs through brush and darkness and accepted a hard truth. The pigs were not escaping because they were stronger or faster. They were surviving because they stayed hidden. Thick vegetation, remote terrain, and endless cover allowed entire sounders to disappear without a trace. Humans were fighting blind. Once this became clear, farmers changed direction completely. Instead of trying to find the pigs, they decided to let the pigs expose themselves. The new approach was unsettling but precise. Farmers began capturing wild pigs alive rather than killing them. These animals were restrained, fitted with GPS tracking collars, and then released back into the landscape. Nothing about their behavior was altered. They were not trained or controlled. They were simply allowed to return to doing what pigs know how best to do. Quietly, these animals became known as Judas pigs. Once released, the collared pigs moved naturally. They searched for other pigs, they followed scent trails, returned to familiar feeding areas, and slipped through dense cover no human could enter. They rejoined sounders without resistance because pigs are social animals driven by instinct. The GPS collars transmitted constant location data. For the first time, farmers were not guessing. They were watching. What appeared on the screens changed everything. The collars revealed bedding areas hidden deep in brush. They exposed narrow travel routes, used night after night. They showed where pigs crossed property lines and where they gathered near water during heat. Entire feeding zones that had never been detected came into view. The land suddenly made sense. What once felt random was now organized and predictable. Farmers did not rush to act. They studied the data carefully. When a Judas pig joined a sounder, they tracked that group for days or even weeks. They learned when the pigs moved, where they rested, and how large the group was. They observed leadership patterns and group behavior. This patience was critical. Acting too early would scatter the pigs and destroy the advantage. Once the patterns were clear, traps were placed exactly where the pigs were guaranteed to pass. These operations were coordinated across multiple properties, so escape routes were closed. When the moment came, entire sounders were captured at once. There was no warning, no chase, no survivors left behind to adapt. Afterward, the Judas pigs were released again. They moved on and repeated the process with new groups. As more collared pigs moved through the region, safe areas vanished. There were no hidden refuges left. The pigs' strongest trait, their social behavior, had become their weakness. They could change timing, avoid humans, and shift territory, but they could not stop being pigs. Their instincts betrayed them every time. The Judas pigs did not kill or attack. They revealed. Through patience, coordination, and relentless observation, farmers turned knowledge into control. The success brought relief, but it also carried a warning. This victory came only after years of effort, expense, and escalation. It also showed that fighting nature demands discipline and consequences that cannot be ignored. Results, lessons, and the hard truth. After years of relentless effort, the combined strategies have begun to show measurable results. Patience, trenches, sour mash trapping, night operations, and the most brilliant Judas pigs trick are no longer isolated experiments. When applied together and across large areas, they have changed the balance. In regions where farmers worked in coordination, wild pig populations have dropped sharply. Fields that were once destroyed season after season are now producing stable yields. Crop losses have decreased, and some farms are finally seeing a return on years of defensive investment. The key factor has been coordination. Individual success means little if neighboring land remains unmanaged. Farmers learned this the hard way. Removing pigs from one property only pushed the problem next door. Those pigs would breed, regroup, and return. This created what experts call a replacement cycle, where removed animals are quickly replaced by newcomers. To stop this, farmers formed task forces that covered entire counties. These groups shared data, aligned schedules, and acted at the same time. When pigs were removed, they were removed everywhere. This prevented gaps where populations could recover unnoticed. Still, no one believes the problem is solved. Evolution does not stop. The pigs that survive are not the careless ones. They are the most cautious, the most alert, and the most adaptable. Each generation learns from pressure. Some avoid bait. Others change routes or feeding times. This creates a constant cycle where humans gain ground and pigs respond. What farmers have achieved is not victory. It is control. That control requires constant effort, shared responsibility, and readiness to adapt again. Wild boars remain relentless. They are a living reminder that in the struggle between human systems and nature, progress is always temporary. The enemy does not rest, and it never stops learning. Make sure to click the cards on the screen now for more interesting videos.